I remember the smell of fresh floor polish that spring morning, the kind that made your shoes squeak as you walked down the hallway of Lincoln Elementary. It was picture day. Not just any picture day, but the official class photo that would hang in the school's main corridor for years to come, immortalizing Miss Peterson's 5th grade class of 1998. I had woken up earlier than usual that morning, the excitement bubbling in my stomach, as my mother brushed my hair into 2 perfect puffs, adorned with red ribbons that matched my dress. She had ironed it twice the night before, smoothing out every wrinkle with meticulous care. It was the dress my grandmother had sent from Georgia, the one with tiny embroidered cherries around the collar. "You look beautiful, Maya," my mother had said, her hands resting on my shoulders as we both gazed into the mirror. "Just like a princess." The weight of her gold necklace hung around my neck, a family heirloom she only let me wear on special occasions. I felt important. I felt seen. But that feeling didn't follow me through the double doors of Lincoln Elementary. "Everyone line up by height," Miss Peterson announced, clapping her hands twice to get our attention. Her voice carried that artificial cheeriness that adults often use when they're trying to organize children. "We need to make sure everyone can be seen in the photo." I joined the line, standing behind Kevin Matthews, and in front of Lily Chen. Miss Peterson walked down the row, occasionally shifting a student forward or backward. When she reached me, she paused, her lips pursing slightly. "Maya," she said, her voice lowered but not enough that others couldn't hear. "Why don't you move to the back row?" I blinked, confused. "But I'm shorter than Kevin and taller than Lily." Miss Peterson's smile remained fixed, but something in her eyes hardened. "Your hair takes up a lot of space, dear. We need to make sure you don't draw too much attention. The back row will be perfect for you." The words hung in the air like an unpleasant odor. I felt a flush of heat rise to my cheeks as several students turned to look at me. Kevin snickered behind his hand. Lily stared at her shoes. "But my mom did my hair special today," I said, my voice suddenly small and unfamiliar to my own ears. "It's lovely," Miss Peterson said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But for the purposes of a balanced photo, you'll be in the back row. Now scoot along." I did as I was told, shuffling past my classmates to take my place in the back row, next to children who were at least half a head taller than me. From this position, I knew only the top of my head, and my eyes would be visible in the photo. "Perfect!" Mr. Allen, the photographer, called out. "Now everyone say cheese." I didn't say cheese. I couldn't form the word. Instead, I stood there, feeling the weight of my mother's necklace against my skin, now seeming heavier than before. I thought about how excited she had been this morning, how she had taken pictures of me on our front porch, promising to show them to my father when he returned from his business trip tomorrow. My father. The thought of him made my stomach clench. He had been away for almost 2 weeks, traveling for work as he often did. He was a photographer, not the kind that took school pictures like Mr. Allen, but the kind whose work appeared in magazines and galleries. He took pictures that made people feel things. That's what he always told me. "A good photograph tells a story, Maya," he would say, "and everyone deserves to have their story told." When the final bell rang that afternoon, I walked home slowly, scuffing my shiny black shoes against the sidewalk. I didn't want to tell my mother what had happened. I didn't want to see the hurt in her eyes or hear her try to explain why some people couldn't see the beauty in the things that made us different. But mothers have a way of knowing when something is wrong. "How was picture day?" she asked, setting a glass of milk and a plate of cookies on the kitchen table. I shrugged, picking at a chocolate chip cookie without taking a bite. "Fine." "Just fine?" She sat across from me, her eyebrows raised. That doesn't sound like my excited girl from this morning. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The words tumbled out between unexpected sobs. Ms. Peterson made me stand in the back row because my hair takes up too much space. She said I would draw too much attention. My mother's face went completely still. Then, very carefully, she placed her hands flat on the table. She said what? That my hair takes up too much space, I repeated, wiping at my eyes with the back of my hand. And now, no one will be able to see me in the class photo, and the special hair you did for me won't even matter. My mother took a deep breath. I recognized that breath. It was the one she took when she was trying very hard not to let her anger show. Maya, listen to me. There is nothing wrong with your hair or the space it takes up. Your hair is beautiful. You are beautiful. But Ms. Peterson is wrong, my mother said firmly. And sometimes adults can be wrong too. Your father will be home tomorrow, and we'll figure this out together. I didn't know what figuring it out meant, but the determined look in my mother's eyes told me that Ms. Peterson had made a bigger mistake than I realized. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment in my head, hearing Ms. Peterson's words, feeling the eyes of my classmates on me as I walked to the back row. I wondered if this was something that happened to all black girls, or if there was something specifically wrong with me, with my hair, with the space I took up in the world. The next morning, my father's voice woke me up. I hadn't heard him come in. He must have arrived home very late. But the sound of his deep laughter mingling with my mother's hushed tones drew me out of bed. I padded down the hallway in my pajamas to find them sitting at the kitchen table, my father still in his traveling clothes, a cup of coffee between his hands. "There's my girl," he said, opening his arms wide. I ran to him, burying my face in his chest, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the faint smell of airplane air. "I missed you, Daddy." "I missed you more," he said, kissing the top of my head. "Your mother tells me you had an interesting picture day yesterday." I pulled back, looking up at him. His eyes were serious now, the smile gone from his face. "It wasn't good," I admitted. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't sound good at all." My mother placed a hand on his arm. "James, we need to address this. Maya deserves better." He nodded, his jaw set in a way I recognized from rare moments when someone crossed a line with him. "I'll take Maya to school today." My heart skipped a beat. My father rarely took me to school. His work schedule didn't usually allow it. And the idea of him walking into Lincoln Elementary with me filled me with a strange mix of anxiety and vindication. "What are you going to do?" I asked. He smiled, but it wasn't his usual warm smile. It was different, determined. "I'm going to have a conversation about photography with Ms. Peterson." My father insisted I wear the same dress and hairstyle from picture day. My mother redid my puffs, tying the red ribbons with extra care. The gold necklace returned to its place around my neck. "Remember what I always tell you," my father said as we walked hand in hand toward the school. "What's important about a photograph?" "That it tells a story," I recited. "And what else?" "That everyone deserves to have their story told." He squeezed my hand. "That's right. Everyone. No exceptions." When we arrived at the school, the hallways were already bustling with children and teachers preparing for the day. My father's presence drew curious glances. He was taller than most of the other parents, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence that commanded attention. The camera bag slung over his shoulder marked him as different from the usual Lincoln Elementary visitor. Ms. Peterson was writing the day's schedule on the blackboard when we entered the classroom. Her chalk paused mid-word as she noticed us. "Good morning," my father said, his voice polite but firm. "I'm James Wright, Maya's father." Miss Peterson set down her chalk and brushed her hands on her skirt. "Mr. Wright, this is a surprise. Parents usually check in at the front office before coming to the classrooms." "I did check in," he replied smoothly. "The principal is aware I'm here." Something in Miss Peterson's expression shifted. "I see. Is there something I can help you with? I'm just preparing for the day to begin." By now, several of my classmates had entered the room, watching the exchange with undisguised curiosity. I stood beside my father, my back straight, trying to occupy all the space I deserved. "I understand there was a class photo taken yesterday," my father said. Miss Peterson nodded. "Yes, the official class photo for the year. It went very well." "Did it?" My father raised an eyebrow. "Maya tells me she was asked to stand in the back row, despite not being one of the taller students in class." "Well, we had to consider the overall composition of the photo," Miss Peterson replied, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "Sometimes adjustments need to be made." "Composition," my father repeated as if testing the word. "That's interesting terminology. I'm familiar with composition myself, being a photographer." Miss Peterson's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, do you take family portraits?" My father laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, Miss Peterson. I don't take family portraits. I'm a documentary photographer. My work has appeared in National Geographic, Time, and the New York Times. Last year, I won the Pulitzer Prize for my series on children in war zones." The silence that followed was profound. I watched as Miss Peterson's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, disbelief, and then something that looked like fear. I wasn't aware," she stammered. "No, you weren't," my father agreed. "Just as you weren't aware of the impact your decision would have on my daughter. When you told her that her hair took up too much space, that she would draw too much attention, what message do you think she received?" Miss Peterson glanced around the classroom, now filling with students who had stopped their usual morning routines to watch. "Mr. Wright, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Why?" my father asked. "Your comments weren't made privately. They were made in front of the entire class." I could feel the eyes of my classmates on me, but for once I didn't shrink under their gaze. Standing next to my father, I felt taller somehow. "I didn't intend to upset anyone," Miss Peterson said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Intent doesn't erase impact," my father replied. "Maya came home yesterday believing there was something wrong with her hair, with a fundamental part of who she is. As an educator, you have a responsibility to ensure all your students feel valued and seen." The principal, Dr. Harris, appeared in the doorway. "Is everything all right here?" My father turned to him. "Dr. Harris, I was just discussing yesterday's class photo with Miss Peterson. It seems there was an issue with how the students were arranged." Dr. Harris looked between my father and Miss Peterson, clearly sensing the tension. "I see. Mr. Wright, I understand you're concerned, but I assure you, with all due respect," my father interrupted, "I'm not here for assurances. I'm here because my daughter was singled out and made to feel that her natural hair was something to be hidden away. In the back row," Dr. Harris's expression grew serious. "That's a concerning allegation." "It's not an allegation. It happened," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Miss Peterson said my hair takes up too much space, and that I would draw too much attention if I stood in my proper place in line. The classroom had gone completely silent. Even the usual shuffle of backpacks and pencil cases had ceased. Every eye was on us. Dr. Harris turned to Miss Peterson. "Is this true?" Miss Peterson's face had gone pale. "I was simply trying to create a balanced photograph. I didn't mean anything by it." "A balanced photograph," my father repeated. "Interesting concept. Dr. Harris, I have a proposal." "I'm listening," the principal said cautiously. "I'd like to retake the class photo, properly, this time. Every student in their rightful place, with no one hidden or pushed aside because of their appearance." Dr. Harris hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I think that would be appropriate. Mr. Allen is actually scheduled to be here tomorrow for the 6th grade photos. I can arrange for him to retake this class as well." "No need for Mr. Allen," my father said, patting his camera bag. "I have my equipment with me. We can do it today." A murmur of excitement rippled through the classroom. Having a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer take their class photo was far more interesting than the usual picture day routine. Dr. Harris looked momentarily flustered, but quickly recovered. "Well, that's certainly generous of you, Mr. Wright. If Ms. Peterson agrees, I don't see why not." All eyes turned to Ms. Peterson, who looked as though she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. "Of course," she managed. "That would be fine." My father smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Excellent. We can do it after lunch, when the light in the courtyard is better. And Maya," he added, turning to me, "will stand exactly where she belongs, not hidden in the back, because her beautiful hair takes up space, but positioned according to her height, just like everyone else." The morning passed in a blur. Word spread quickly throughout the school about the famous photographer who was going to retake Miss Peterson's class photo. By lunchtime, teachers from other classes were finding excuses to pass by our room, stealing glances at my father, who had stayed to set up his equipment in the courtyard. Miss Peterson was quieter than usual, her usual brisk instructions replaced with subdued suggestions. She didn't look me in the eye once. After lunch, my father gathered everyone in the courtyard. The spring sunshine filtered through the oak trees, creating a dappled light that seemed almost magical. He had set up his professional lighting equipment and a backdrop that made the school's brick wall look like an elegant setting rather than an ordinary courtyard. "All right, everyone," my father called, clapping his hands much as Ms. Peterson had done yesterday. "Let's line up by height, properly this time." The students shuffled into line with no resistance or commentary. I found my place naturally between Kevin and Lily, right in the middle row. No one suggested I move to the back. No one mentioned my hair. My father adjusted his camera on the tripod, looking through the viewfinder. "Miss Peterson, would you please stand to the left of the group?" Miss Peterson moved stiffly to her assigned spot, her smile fixed and uncomfortable. "Perfect," my father said, stepping back to address the class. "Before we take this photo, I want to tell you all something important about photography and about life. Every single one of you deserves to be seen. Every single one of you takes up exactly the right amount of space. Your hair, your skin, your height, your glasses, your braces, all the things that make you uniquely you, are not things to be hidden away or minimized." The courtyard was silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Even the younger children seemed to understand the weight of my father's words. In my career, I've photographed people from all walks of life, in countries all over the world. And do you know what I've learned? He continued. The most powerful photographs are the ones that tell the truth, The ones that show people exactly as they are, in all their beautiful complexity. That's what we're going to do today." He returned to his camera, made a few final adjustments, and then looked up with a smile. "Now, everyone say, 'Truth.'" "Truth!" the class shouted in unison, and I found myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time that day. My father took several shots, moving around to capture different angles. He took individual portraits, of each student as well, spending the same amount of time and attention on everyone. When it was my turn, he winked at me before pressing the shutter. "You're taking up exactly the right amount of space, Maya," he whispered. "Never forget that." By the end of the day, the mood in the classroom had transformed. There was a buzz of excitement, a sense that something significant had happened. As the final bell rang, Dr. Harris appeared in our classroom doorway. "Mr. Wright, thank you for your time today," he said, extending his hand to my father. "I think this has been a valuable experience for everyone involved." My father shook his hand firmly. "I'm glad to hear that. I'll have the photos processed and delivered to the school by next week." Dr. Harris nodded, then turned to Ms. Peterson. "Ms. Peterson, could I see you in my office before you leave today?" The tension returned to her shoulders immediately. "Of course, Dr. Harris." As we gathered our things to leave, Lily Chen approached me cautiously. "Your dad is really cool," she said. "And I like your hair. I always have." I blinked, surprised by her admission. "Thanks, Lily." "I should have said something yesterday," she added, looking down at her shoes again. "When Ms. Peterson made you go to the back. I'm sorry I didn't." Before I could respond, Kevin Matthews joined us. "Yeah, that was messed up what happened yesterday. Your hair is awesome." One by one, my classmates came to offer similar sentiments. Apologies for not speaking up, compliments about my hair, excited comments about my father's photography. It felt like a dam had broken, releasing a flood of kindness that had been held back by fear or conformity. Ms. Peterson left for her meeting with Dr. Harris without saying goodbye to the class. As my father and I walked home hand in hand once again, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen to her. "Will Ms. Peterson get in trouble?" I asked. My father was quiet for a moment. "I don't know, Maya. That's for Dr. Harris to decide. But what's important is that she learns from this. That everyone learns from this. Do you think she will?" He squeezed my hand. "I hope so. People can change, but first, they have to recognize that they need to." A week later, the new class photos were delivered to the school. My father had produced a stunning portrait of our class, one where every student was clearly visible, where the lighting captured each face with dignity and grace. He had enlarged it to twice the size of the usual class photos, and it was hung prominently in the main hallway, replacing the space where Mr. Allen's photos usually went. Beneath it, my father had placed a small plaque that read, "Ms. Peterson's 5th grade class, everyone deserving to be seen." The photo quickly became a talking point throughout the school. Parents commented on it during open house. Teachers used it as a springboard for discussions about inclusion and respect. And, most importantly, students stopped to look at it, really look at it, seeing themselves and their classmates in a new light. Ms. Peterson remained our teacher for the rest of the year, but something had shifted in her approach. She was more careful with her words, more conscious of the impact they might have. She never mentioned the incident directly to me, but I noticed how she made a point of complimenting my projects, of calling on me in class, of ensuring I was included in group activities. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, but it was a noticeable one. The last day of school that year, she handed out our report. Cards and paused when she reached my desk. "Maya," she said softly, "your father's photograph is remarkable. I've learned a lot from it, and from you. I hope you have a wonderful summer." It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but there was a sincerity in her eyes that told me she meant what she said. I nodded, accepting her words for what they were. A beginning. That summer, something unexpected happened. My father's photograph of our class went viral online. A parent had shared it on social media, along with the story behind it. And within days, it had been shared thousands of times. News outlets picked it up, praising it as a powerful statement about representation and belonging. My father was interviewed on a national morning show, where he spoke eloquently about the importance of ensuring all children feel valued and seen. But he was careful to protect my privacy, never mentioning me by name, turning what could have been a personal story of humiliation into a broader message of empowerment. I watched from home, feeling a complex mix of emotions: pride in my father, gratitude for his protection, and a growing understanding that what had happened to me was part of something larger than myself. By the time 6th grade began that fall, our class photo had become a symbol. Other schools across the country were inspired to reconsider their approach to class photos, to ensure no child was marginalized or hidden away. Teachers were having conversations about unconscious bias and how it shapes their interactions with students. It was more than any of us could have anticipated. Ms. Peterson didn't return to Lincoln Elementary that year. I heard from other students that she had transferred to a different school district. I never knew if she left by choice or was asked to leave. Part of me hoped she had taken the lessons of that day with her, that wherever she went, she was more mindful of the space each child deserved to occupy. 20 years have passed since that spring day in Ms. Peterson's classroom. The photograph my father took still hangs in Lincoln Elementary's main hallway, though most of the current students and teachers don't know the full story behind it. Sometimes when I visit my old school to speak about my own career as a journalist, I stop to look at it, at the faces of my classmates frozen in time, at my own face, beaming with newfound confidence, my hair taking up exactly the right amount of space. Life has a way of coming full circle in the most unexpected ways. Last month, I was assigned to cover a story on education funding cuts affecting schools in underprivileged neighborhoods. I visited one particularly struggling school where the principal was fighting to maintain arts programs despite dwindling resources. As I walked through the school's dilapidated hallways, conducting interviews with teachers passionate about protecting their students' access to creative expression, I turned a corner and stopped dead in my tracks. There, emerging from a classroom, with a stack of papers, was a face I hadn't seen in 2 decades. Older now, with streaks of gray in her once brown hair, but unmistakably Ms. Peterson. She didn't recognize me at first. Why would she? I was no longer a 10-year-old girl with ribbon-adorned puffs. I was a grown woman with a press badge and a notebook. "Excuse me," I said, my heart suddenly racing. "Ms. Peterson?" She looked up, squinting slightly before her eyes widened in recognition. "Maya? Maya Wright?" I nodded, watching as a series of emotions crossed her face. Surprise, embarrassment, and something that looked like regret. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "It's been so long." "It has," I agreed. "I'm covering a story on the funding challenges facing schools like this one." "I didn't know you taught here." She clutched her papers tighter to her chest. 10 years now. It's a far cry from Lincoln Elementary, but the children here need dedicated teachers more than anywhere. Something in her voice made me pause. There was a humility there that the Ms. Peterson of my childhood had lacked, a genuine concern for her students that seemed to run deeper than professional obligation. Would you be willing to talk to me about how the cuts are affecting your classroom, specifically? I asked. I'm trying to put human faces to the statistics. She hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Everyone deserves to have their story told. The phrase, my father's phrase, caught me off guard. She saw my reaction and offered a small, sad smile. Your father's words, she acknowledged. They've stayed with me all these years. That day, it changed the trajectory of my career, of my life, really. We found an empty classroom to talk, as she described the challenges her students faced. No money for new textbooks, crowded classrooms, outdated technology. I saw a passion in her that I'd never witnessed during my time in her class. After what happened at Lincoln, she said, her voice quieter now, I did a lot of soul-searching. I realized I had been teaching from a place of, autopilot maybe? I wasn't seeing my students, not really seeing them as individuals with their own stories and struggles. When I left, I decided to go where I was most needed, where I could make a real difference. And have you? I asked. Made a difference? She looked down at her hands. I try, every day. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes. But I never again want a child to feel the way I made you feel that day. The article I wrote about the school didn't focus solely on Ms. Peterson, but I made sure her story was included. How a veteran teacher had chosen to work in one of the most challenging environments because she believed every child deserved to be seen and heard. I didn't mention our shared history. Some stories aren't mine alone to tell. 2 weeks after the article was published, the school board announced a review of the proposed cuts. A local business coalition, moved by the stories in my piece, pledged to fund the arts programs for the next 3 years. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a reprieve, a chance for the teachers and students to continue their vital work. Ms. Peterson sent me a short email after the announcement. Thank you for seeing us. Your father would be proud. My father, who passed away 5 years ago, would indeed have been proud. Not just of the article, but of the journey that led me to write it. He taught me that a single photograph, a single moment of standing up for what's right can create ripples that extend far beyond what we can imagine. That class photo didn't just change me. It changed Ms. Peterson. It changed how a school thought about representation. It contributed in some small way to a national conversation about belonging and dignity in educational spaces. And now, too, decades later, it had somehow led me back to the very person who had once made me feel invisible, giving me the opportunity to help make her students seen. Life rarely offers such perfect symmetry, such poetic justice. But when it does, I think we're meant to recognize it for what it is. A reminder that growth is possible, that healing can come in unexpected forms, and that sometimes the people who hurt us most can become examples of our most profound human capacity, the ability to change. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone made you feel small, only to later find yourself in a position to lift them up? I'd love to hear how you handled it. Sometimes our greatest tests of character come when we're faced with helping those who once hurt us. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need a reminder that taking up space, their rightful space, is never something to apologize for. We all deserve to be seen, exactly as we're,